thank you very much for coming. It's a little after 2, and this is the first in a series of, I guess, what I'm calling public conversations about Hudson. Here at the Park Theater, generosity of Shanan Magee making this place available to us to have kind of community conversations about the state of the city and the future of the city. And for me, this is really just a way of trying to get us in the same room, talking and thinking about Hudson, which doesn't happen very much. And I'm really committed to that idea. I camp out every Sunday from 4 to 6 at some public space in the city of Hudson and make myself available to anybody that really want to come by. It's very difficult to get anybody to do anything. Very often I'm there alone for a couple hours, but that's quite all right. And so for this series, I'm calling it Neighbors, because that's what we are. And I want to bring that kind of sentiment into my campaign for mayor. And I thought that the best way to create a conversation about Hudson and to make it interesting, because it can be uninteresting, and it can be confusing, was to try to make it entertaining and to try to just sit down with people from different walks of life and get into a conversation about Hudson. And the first person that I thought of was Mark Allen, who we've met on the sidewalk, like pretty much the way I meet most everybody. And you've done amazing work here in Hudson.
Well, thank you. So generous.
Yeah, and I had no guarantee that you would actually accept the invitation. It felt like I threw it out at you.
Thank you. I was happy to be here. And I actually met and knew and talked with you before you were running for mayor. You were the type of person who would just walk around the neighborhood, sometimes with your daughter. You'd come to art openings, and I always would strike up a conversation with you. So I feel like I've known you since before you were running for mayor. So yeah. I'm happy to be here.
Nice. I appreciate you accepting the invitation. And just as a full transparency, there's almost no structure to this conversation. Mark and I will talk. I've got questions for him. I've
got questions for you.
Yep. And then at some point we'll open up to public questions, and then if there's enough people and enough interest, I thought we would have kind of a town hall kind of thing. There's a mic there where we could name a topic and just have a chance to have everybody share without the need to be asking a question, without the need to be responded to, just so we can listen to each other. So I guess I wanted to start maybe with a question to you about your relationship with Hudson, like how you came here and sort of what you love about it.
I am a city implant. I moved here in about 2008 with my partner at the time named Jim Cruson. We lived in Catskill in a house owned by, do you remember Noah Fishel and Jim that used to live in the townhouse where the maker is? Yes. They were our landlords. So we moved there at that house. I had been living in the city for 16 years, Texas before that. And I just kind of ended up here because he was my partner at the time, and he's like, oh, I have this opportunity to have this fabulous house in this little town of Catskill. I didn't know anything about it. I knew Jim had lived in Hudson for a little bit in that pink house right behind the maker. That's now white. Yeah, that whatever that is now.
It's the office.
Yes. So when I first came to Hudson, I was like, oh, what a strange little town. But we lived in Catskill. But I noticed that when we lived in Catskill, we actually lived in Hudson because we both worked here. And, we both kind of like got jobs here. I was working in shops, antique stores, picking up extra money. And we would go to functions here. All our friends were here. And because we knew Noah and Jim, we went to the whole dinner party scene back then. If you remember living in Hudson back then, everything was dinner parties. And we would do things like that. And so we kind of lived here. And then we separated at some point, and I ended up moving here because I'd been working for John Ashbery and David Kermani, that used to live on the square. And so now I kind of ended up as in the Flowchart Foundation family, and then I ended up moving into that building. And now I kind of manage and run and renovate that building. Yeah. And I always loved Hudson. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was like a neighborhood of Brooklyn that was kind of expanded. There was a mix of relaxation, for people that are older, that are from the city that really need to calm down, but also the friction of craziness. I noticed that Hudson had a lot of interesting dysfunction. There was a lot of interesting qualities to it, just like in New York City. So that's what I liked about it. I felt like I wasn't sacrificing that completely. And I've been here this long. I didn't mean to come here, but I really like it. That's my story.
Beautiful. I remember somebody describing Hudson as sort of the island of misfit toys.
Yes.
And I moved to Hudson, and I had a store on Warren Street at 314 Warren.
Oh,
I
okay.
imported things from India, and I spent a lot of time at Noah and Jim's house on that back porch, and just how magnificent that place was. I have a lot of memories of the backyard.
Yes. You know, it's interesting. Hudson has always been a small town, and there seemed to be several, at the time, there were key people who were like social, what's the word I'm looking for, like hens. They were bringing all the people gravitate to their homes or their events, and I don't think that's changed. It's always been a community.
Yeah. I want to hear about your work. I mean, I feel like, well, tell me about the foundation.
The Flowchart Foundation? I'm kind of disconnected from the Flowchart Foundation now in an official capacity. I work at the building, I work for David. But it's still going on. We had a new director come in about 7, 8 years ago, and he really vamped it up into something. But I'm kind of just the property manager of the building now. It's not kind of my scene, their take on poetry and stuff. But I'm part of the family. Yeah.
So tell me about the videos that you've sort of taken on the role of kind of satirist of sort of civic life in Hudson.
When I first moved from Catskill to Hudson, I was already doing ASMR videos on YouTube and parodies of ASMR and mukbang videos where I'd eat, but they were always parodies of those things. And there was an old video, an art video piece from Dallas, Texas in the 80s that was a guy in a tuxedo singing about the city, and he was in all the things. And I credit this at the end of my Hudson song video. I basically took this idea and I made it into a different idea. But I thought, wouldn't it be funny to take that idea and do it for Hudson? And I did that thing. I got a tux, and Will shot a lot of it. This is when Will and I first met, before we were even dating. And I put that out thinking just like 100 people would see it, because I didn't get a lot of hits on YouTube, and it totally exploded locally. A lot of people saw that Hudson song video, and it inspired me to do more. And I had always been involved I always paid attention to politics. And I found the small town politics of Hudson to be very interesting. My background was art, but also in New York City in the 90s, I was very much an activist with ACT UP and Queer Nation and things like this. I was always involved with things like that. And so I tended to be drawn to controversial politics, or if there were scandals going on, I was always paying attention to that, even though I've never quite had the capacity to really understand the mechanics of how politics work. I kind of start from the bottom and go up. So I started doing videos because of things that I had paid attention to about politics. It's the sidewalk issue. There's been some others. So that's how I started doing those, and they're popular. Some of them are, some of them aren't.
Well, I remember you had you had the video rolling in the artsy video, the Ronald McDonald
eating kale, yes.
I mean, of course. I had a very hard time passing that building with my daughter. My daughter she was transfixed and mesmerized by it. I spent a lot of time watching that video on the sidewalk, and for that I'm very grateful.
Thank you, yes. Thank you. That was a commentary on, farmers market, organic, community-based, farm-to-table, ethically sourced food.
Yeah.
Yes.
It definitely provoked some very beautiful, innocent questions from my daughter about what the hell was going on. Why would this person do this? What is this?
And then Will and I did it live in the window for Winter Walk one year.
Oh, we missed that.
Yeah.
It was great.
We were both dressed as Ronald, eating kale and drinking wine.
Nice. Cool. Well, do you want to share some of the questions that you've got?
Some people submitted questions. Yeah. Well, first let's talk about you. Yeah. You're running for mayor. Yeah. You're one of 4 candidates right now for the mayor of Hudson. Yeah. In this last recent, I would say year, maybe 2 years, we've seen a big sea change in the city's politics and the way it's run. We've seen a lot of new voices who are speaking up. Why are you running for mayor?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think for the simplest answer is that I've lived here for long enough to feel like I've seen us have the same kind of conversations over and over and over again, and never really seeming like things really get done. And ultimately, having a lot of hope in our current mayor in 2020, 2019, and feeling ultimately that I wasn't seeing anything happen. And I wanted to do my part. I had been invited or asked to run in 2018 because I had done this Future Hudson series. I sort of put myself out there as somebody that had thoughts about the city. And I have really vivid memories of feeling like, hell no. You know what I mean? Like,
Who asked you?
it was Michael Chimides. He was part of the city Dems.
Okay.
So we had a bunch of meetings, and I don't know, man. I just say that to say that it had been on my mind for a long time, and I really remember at that time feeling like I was too thin-skinned, and I just didn't want to suffer whatever somebody has to suffer to participate in public life in Hudson, because I had observed that to be true. But enough time passed. I think the pandemic changed a lot of different things, and ultimately I felt like I had the conviction of my own ideas, and I felt like there were things that weren't going the way that I thought they should, and so it felt like an opportunity to step up and be of service. And we hadn't had a contested election in a long time. We were really sort of asleep, it feels like, for a long time.
This can happen to small towns. The government can be run by people that aren't challenged, and yes, so I think Hudson was leaning that way.
Yeah, and the pandemic kind of just we just went into.
It put a spell over things.
Yeah.
What do you think is the mayor's job in a place like Hudson?
Yeah, I mean, I've developed my own idea of what I feel like the mayor's job is, to sort of set a vision and set a direction and set a tone for the city, and to the way that I imagine the mayor's job is really to sort of advocate for the best possible solution for the city of Hudson, based on a shared understanding of the city's needs. And there's like each of those chunks, there's like chunks in there that are really particular to me. That means that we need a clear idea of what are Hudson's needs. You know what I mean? And I'm a researcher, so I feel like we should have real conversations based on as much data as we have access to, and that we should invest in a shared understanding, that we should have community conversations about what the city's considering, what those needs are, and what the possibilities are. And then to, advocate for the most creative solution for the city of Hudson. So that's my idea of the job and how I imagine how I would do it. There's probably a much more literal job description than that.
Do you feel that when problems arise in the city, there are certain things that you should tend to publicly and certain things you should delegate authority to? Or do you feel like you should be present for anything that pops up, for instance, National Grid tearing up all of Warren Street for several months? My reason saying that is an often criticism of the current administration, which seemed to happen in the last few years, was there were major problems going on, and people were speaking up, the residents of Hudson, and the administration was basically saying, it's not our problem, it's a business thing. This happened with 11 Warren Street. Do you feel that it's okay for an administration to do something like that?
No, well, there's a couple things in your question that both have sort of different answers. I mean, I think on the National Grid thing, I do think that the city has really, really poor digital communications. We have an app that's kind of not used consistently or very well. And it doesn't seem like there's really real investment in clear sort of communication about what's going on. Unless you're on Facebook, it seems to me. And I'm not on Facebook, so it's almost like not having a mayor at the moment, and I don't know how I might get an update about what's going on Main Street from the city if I'm not on Facebook.
So, but there would be, if you were mayor, especially with the idea of a news planning structure, don't you feel like you would get that information from the planning, with charter change ideas and stuff? From the planning board?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly a big piece of my platform and my intention is to invest in more consistent and more clear communication across the board, and to be create opportunities for in-person gatherings like this. So there's a regular schedule of opportunities to come together, and also there's sort of regular communication from City Hall and from the mayor's office about what's going on. It's not my experience that that's a priority now. And it's absolutely essential to me. I come from a market research background, so I think constantly about communications, and I think there's so much of the confusion and the chaos and the conflict in Hudson is really a communications problem. I mean, that's an oversimplification, but I think a lot can be done simply by prioritizing clear, consistent communication. That's what I want from my mayor. And I think in part that's sort of what motivated me to run is I just wasn't seeing the kind of leadership that I wanted and I thought we all would benefit from. And so I thought I would step up and see if I could do it.
I think the idea of a lot of problems stemming from lack of planning and communication is probably what many people would say is one of the worst problems in Hudson right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, you know. Here's a question from a submitted question. Many of the successful business owners on Warren Street who have contributed mightily to the success and prosperity of Hudson are getting set to retire in the coming years, or have already done so in the case of Tansies. And they thank Tansies for all they did for the community. Peter, what is your plan to attract the next generation of small business owners to ensure Warren Street continues to thrive with a wide diversity of offerings rather than decay into block after block of for rent signs? Thank you. And that is from the owners of the Majors Taylor.
Oh, yeah.
Over there.
Well, definitely a shout out to Tansies.
Caitlin and Rich.
To Tansies. And to them, of course, but also Tansies for the best egg sandwich. And I guess one thing that I think is certainly true now is that I don't feel like City Hall has a sincere economic development vision or plan. And I think that that's something that it definitely would be something that I would focus on. I remember I was living in San Francisco, and when Arnold Schwarzenegger ran for governor, it might be an unpopular reference, but I remember him saying that he was going to be like a cheerleader for California. He was just going to go out and he was going to tell everybody about how awesome California was. And I do think that in some way, economic development, well, I know that economic development is part of my platform, but going out there and making sure that people know that Hudson's a place to move, Hudson's a place to open business, try to bring new employers and new industries into Hudson would be a priority for me. I think we need to broaden the tax base and we need to invite kind of new industries into town. So, my response to that question is that. I feel like we would want to invite people to Hudson and make Warren Street and make the city a place where people want to come and do business.
When you say invite, what do you mean?
I really mean like that I want to start sort of a growth council, and I want we are sort of filthy with very smart, very creative people in the Hudson area. And I think that we can tap into their ideas about economic opportunity and industries that might fit. And we should invite them. We should make an offer to industries and companies that we think might be a good fit for us. And this all goes back to the idea that when I moved here, I was 30. I was a lost young man. I tell this story a lot. And Hudson was a place of possibility. Like I was able to start over in Hudson. And in 2025, Hudson isn't a place where people come and start over. But we need to make it a place of possibility. And I think that means sort of thinking big about what's possible here and really trying to make it a place where people can get a job and live and find a place to live as a young person that wants to start a family.
Well, it is true that the population has gone down, I think, since 2019, right? Yes, and which was kind of shocking considering how many New York Times articles there were, throughout the year. But it's now on a decline, and the median age is 41, I think now.
We're old. We're old, and there's fewer of us, and it's been declining for years. This is declining from I think since 2000, and then I think in 2000 we were at 9,000 people, and so we've been on a steady decline for a long time.
Talking about business, there was this. I don't know if you remember the comic book shop that used to be down, I think, on the second 200 block.
The Joust?
It was called Pure Folly, and it was run by this great kid. He was probably in his 30s, but his name was Ed, and he lived like in a town outside of here. And this was a great comic shop. This guy knew his shit. Like he had all kinds of comics from all over the world. He could talk anything, Crumb Brothers, current Wolverine stuff. He was incredible, and he would have events. And he was someone who I imagine probably got some kind of business loan, something like that, and started this small business that was fan-friggin-tastic. And he eventually got priced out of that block. When he wanted to renew his lease, he tried to renegotiate because he wasn't making money. And he didn't strike me as someone who had rich parents, you know what I mean? And he was trying to run this comic shop. And he eventually just packed it in and left. And he was having a good run too, but he couldn't afford the rent. I wish there was some kind of a board, what you meant, a growth board, that somebody like that could go to, that could maybe intervene and talk with landlords, because I manage a building and I see what it's like. Everyone's fighting for space, and rich people often win. Yeah. And I wish there was somewhere people could go, not that they would tell landlords or, whatever, supers, what they can do or charge or whatever, but somewhere someone could have hope, because he was really trying. And I even helped him calling people like that I knew had empty storefronts. I was like, this kid, he's great, he could move his shop and be able to pay this much, He was willing to pay like $2,400. Yeah. And I was like, this guy should not have been run out of town. Like, he was basically run out of town, and he went somewhere else. Yeah. I wish there was something like that.
Well, number one, I remember I went in there with my daughter. He introduced me to Hilda, which, if anybody's a parent, is an amazing graphic novel that got turned into a Netflix series and has become a favorite for my daughter. So I was a comic book kid, so I love that place too. And on the topic of affordability, which is what you're saying, I feel like, my understanding is that the only solution to affordability is sort of oversupply. And that we just need to make more space available. And my plan for that is just to change how we grow and really reform our zoning, make it easier to build. There are recommendations in the comprehensive plan to move towards form-based code, which actually means that we could actually have retail spaces off of Warren. And so I think if we were to create more opportunities for commercial space and build, we would make it easier for businesses like Folly to stay.
So how is that different than how it exists now?
So currently form-based code, the way the zone is set, the zoning, and there's people in this room that know this a lot better than I do. But the way the code is now is sort of use-based, right? So you can't really open a business I live on Robinson, which is 3rd and State. My neighbor is Basil. He was trying to open a restaurant there for years. But it's not zoned for commercial anymore, right? And so form-based code just says you can do whatever you want in the space as long as you maintain the integrity of the form, so that every block kind of has the same scale, it has the same shape, it has the same sort of character, to really preserve what I think is one of the core assets of Hudson, which is that when you walk, it's the relationship between you and the buildings and each other and the buildings in the street. And we don't have that now. And so form-based code would sort of create a structure that would allow people to show up with ideas and comply with our vision for the way we want our neighborhoods to look and feel. But it would also open up opportunities off of Warren for commercial stops, for corner stores. All that stuff now needs a bunch of variances, I think, at the moment. And so I think at the moment we've got a commercial corridor over Warren Street, which means that our neighbors on the north side of Hudson, it's difficult to open a business.
Okay, interesting.
So
don't you think that's more rules, though?
It's a shift into a different set of rules.
Okay, fair enough. What were you going to say about pure folly?
If we were able to open up the amount of commercial spaces available in that way, it would lower rent and maybe make it easier for somebody like him to find a place in Hudson to stay open.
Okay, all right, good.
In the same way that I feel like, and again, I was an English major in college, but that the warehouse made it really possible down at the river for people that wanted to be on Warren Street, that wanted to have a business on Warren Street. They found opportunity down in the warehouse. That we need supply, and right now it's really hard to build in Hudson. Our planning process is a mess, you know what I mean? Our code is a mess, and we need to really kind of streamline the planning process. There are very simple ways to make that easy. So we just need to make it easy for people to come here and do what they want to do. And I think also that we need to make it clear to people that we want people to come here and to do that kind of thing. From my understanding, there are developers and people with ideas from the outside, and they look at Hudson, and it doesn't look like a place that's easy to do business, and they say, screw it, I don't want to do it. And there are people that come here, and I've heard story after story of people with beautiful ideas that come into Hudson, and they're met by complication and frustration. And so there's untold missed opportunities that my feeling is will come in if we're able just to reform how we reform the code and then streamline the planning process, make it easy and clear for people.
But do you feel you could, infiltrate a very like old boys kind of network of like the code enforcement office and things like that? When I was doing major renovations at our building, there were a lot of frustrations with the code office, even though I love Craig Haig, these are all great people, but it appeared to me that the offices have been around so long, they were just rooms of dusty filing cabinets, and there was a lot of red tape and a lot of contradiction. And my small story, I imagine, was shared with many people here from what you're saying. Do you feel that there's a way to go into those old spaces with people that have been around a long time and make some kind of change?
Well, this is the opportunity that charter reform provides for us, is that we can go in and we can actually design a structure of government that we think serves us best and that's built for the 21st century and not the 19th century. And so there's no question that we have the power to reform the government that we have. And that's why I'm really committed to the idea of a people's charter reform, which is, I can talk about that later, but that puts those kinds of decision makings in the hands of randomly selected residents who are truly representative of the city of Hudson, who will act out of a deep sense of publicness to make decisions that are the best for all of us.
So let's talk about charter reform. So all the four candidates for mayor are technically against the charter reform that has been in everyone's, am I right?
I don't know if that's the case.
They're against it as it had existed as of 2 days ago.
That I don't know. I wouldn't articulate it that way.
Okay.
So I would say that all the candidates have expressed a point of view on charter change, and charter change has met this proposal that was meant to be on the referendum to shift from a city manager from a strong mayor system to a city manager system.
Right.
They just missed the deadline, so that's not on the ballot. I'm sure a lot of people here already know this story. But what that means is, so all the candidates for mayor have said charter reform is a good idea. Most of them have indicated how they would do it.
Differently.
Yeah. And they're all
including you.
Yeah. And they're all pretty much different. And so I think at this moment we're in a conversation about how we might want to redesign the local government.
And I think the people have spoken, and even though this didn't end up happening, it clearly has won in many ways, the charter reform movement, because people have expressed now they see it. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle.
That's right. And I don't know that the genie was ever in the bottle. I mean, this is one of the things why I was against what was done, is that people have been talking about charter reform for ages. You know what I mean? And I think most of the struggles that we had, and this is probably for people that are newer to Hudson, most of the problems that you encounter are problems that we've all been struggling with for like decades. You know what I mean? There are people that have been here longer than me that have been frustrated by the same things, and that this is the evidence over time that what's needed is really structural reform. You know what I mean? That this is not we can go at each other up top on these topical issues and these really sort of issues, but underneath it all is this structure that's disappointed us for decades, and we have a unique opportunity to reform it.
Well, this leads to a great question that was submitted from Tassilo, who's here. He says, Peter Spear is the only one amongst the candidates for mayor who's running not purely on a Band-Aid platform and proposes that Hudson aspire to get its population up to 10K. I'm a fan of this as well. It is a rare positive vision. What specific things would you do, Peter, looking at that to make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, I talk about, being very intentional about being positive. I mean, I talk about Hudson as being the best small town city in America because I think Hudson is an unbelievable place. It's a beautiful place. I think we're all very lucky to live here. I think you would have to be an idiot to not want to live here. I mean, you know what I mean? I think it's fantastic here, and I want to celebrate us, and I want to connect with a kind of pride about what it means to be in Hudson, what it means to be a neighbor in Hudson. and to recognize that we have real challenges, and these challenges are very deep. You know what I mean? There's the structural stuff I was talking about, but we have real economic and financial struggles. I mean, we kind of run almost a structural deficit, and so my understanding of the opportunity is that we need to grow, and so I have a vision to make Hudson livable for 10,000 people. We're at 5,500 now. And I want to use creative urban planning practices to help us have conversations about the kind of city that we want to be and what we want to become and what it would look like to grow in that particular way. And so that's the idea, is to try to give us a North Star that we can all orient ourselves around and have productive conversations about. Because my experience, and I was reminded of this, I was reading your interview with Trixie. You said that, I think something about art needing to be a conversation, but most of it's an argument.
Yes.
I'm so tired of the arguments. You know what I mean? We're stuck in a zero-sum, back and forth, for and against. We get trapped in this binary. And my hope is that if we have a positive North Star to aim at, we can have productive conversations about where we want to go.
Well, it's the North Star thing is interesting. I do feel like that when I first moved to Hudson, there was like a North Star for me, and it was like, oh, this neat place. It's gonna, it's like this. But now that feels missing. Yeah, it does feel missing. Okay, here's a good question from Rob at St. Florian. He says, what will Rob Perry be wearing to the sidewalk project unveiling? What do you think he's going to wear? You follow fashion, don't you? We assume there's going to be an unveiling.
I don't think I'm nearly as fashionable as Rob Perry is. I saw him last week on the sidewalk and he looked great.
Oh.
Yeah. So I would trust whatever Rob Perry feels like wearing.
What do you think of the yellow lines on all the new bump out sidewalks all over town?
I feel like we need to do better.
What do you think that's a good example of?
The planning gap.
Right. Yeah. So for those who don't know, there are these new sidewalks that have been installed. They have a lot of problems. They put bump outs on some of the intersections to try to control traffic, and they were done in a strange way. And then at the last second, they spray painted the curbs of them in this bright yellow paint, and they didn't do a good job. It's several layers of messes. Yeah. And yes, I agree. That could have been done much better.
Could have been done a lot better. Yeah.
And the solution that you feel is just better planning. A city manager.
Well, so the way that I think about the city manager conversation is really about the diagnosis. Like, I'm interested in diagnosing the problem, and the problem that I've been talking about for a long time on Instagram and the Future Hudson was all about is the idea that we have a planning gap. And this was in 2018, 2016, I had a kid. And then I got obsessed all of a sudden I was worried about safety, and I felt like 3rd and Warren, that intersection in particular, was really unsafe when I tried to make changes there, and I discovered.
So more about that. So you went to that intersection where there wasn't a crosswalk that many people thought was kind of dangerous, and you couldn't get the city to do something about it, so you just went out and painted the crosswalk yourself.
There were 2 different intersections, but yeah, me running for mayor really began with a feeling of frustration which I recognized that at 3rd and State, which is the intersection of the state truck route and our main commercial thoroughfare, as a pedestrian at any one of those 4 corners, you literally couldn't see the light. And in fact, the shields on the light that hangs in front of the middle of the intersection are long. They're actually designed to increase visibility for truck drivers, and by being designed for drivers, they're invisible to pedestrians. And so that whole intersection is designed for cars. And this whole city has been designed for cars mostly for the last 30 or 40 years.
Of course.
And so I tried to do what I could to have that intersection designed for people, and really just ran up against the planning gap that because of the structure of the city, because there's no plan. The plan at that time was from 1998 or 2002. There's no planner. That the superintendent of DPW makes every decision about infrastructure depending on what he wants to do. And that's fine. He does a wonderful job. He knows more about the city than anybody else, you know what I mean, in very real ways. And I don't mean disrespect then. But it does mean that decisions get made that are significant by somebody that's not acting on, acting on information necessary to create the experience that residents deserve around these intersections, and certainly that visitors deserve around these intersections.
Do you think that many people that work in the code office and who were we just talking about, Rob Perry and people like that, do you think they are excited about a new planning structure or don't want it?
Well, I feel like I heard. How do I want to answer this? I feel like I've been joking a little bit that I feel like one of the strongest endorsements I got was that I heard that Rob Perry was supporting Kamal because he likes it very much how things are now. He's pretty much left to do whatever he wants, and he knows. I know him. We're friendly. We say hello. We're neighbors. You know what I mean? But he knows that my intention is to change how we deal with our infrastructure, how we deal with our streets and our intersections, and that was likely going to mean change.
So, I get wanting to do things on your own. You can control things and everything. Yeah. And so I feel like there would be people that would not want oversight. Do you think anyone might resign?
No, I don't know that he would resign. I think, we work together on the shared streets. He does amazing work for the city.
I'm in any. I'm seeing. Do you think there'll be like a purge of with the planning gap?
I don't know.
Yeah, with the new planning structure, do you feel like some people would be like, I'm out of here? Like,
no. The only thing that comes to mind is the opportunity that charter reform offers us is to get rid of commissioners. There's like an antiquated system of commissioners that we don't need anymore. But we still need people to do a lot of stuff. We just need somebody in the city to provide continuity around all these decisions, and whether it's a city manager with a planning capacity or a planner with managing capacity, there's a gap in how things run now, and so much just falls through the cracks all the time. And it's it's stuff like it's all over the place.
And if you live here, you can't ignore it.
Yeah.
At the debate, Mayor Kamal mentioned that Michelle Tulio, I think is her name. Tulio is her name. And her position is the something of housing justice, director of housing justice, said that she's currently the city planner when this came up at the debate. What did you think of that?
Well, I was flattered that he referenced me in the debate and the planning gap, right? But he's wrong that Michelle Tulio is a planner. She's the housing justice director. So he's correct that there is a planner that works for the city, right? But her job, and I've talked to her about this, her job is not the city planner, right? And so we need a city planner. We need somebody who's making decisions around all of this stuff, and referencing the planning documents that we have, and acting as a voice of the resident when significant decisions are made. Because at the moment it's like the goldfish thing. We're just there's no continuity. We kind of revisit the same issue. There's no access to the data that we already have. Mm-hmm. The perfect example of this is that I was making a noise about 3rd and Warren, that intersection, about how unsafe it was. Nothing happened. I ended up spray painting the crosswalks at 3rd and State, which had never had crosswalks before because Rob Perry simply refused to answer the question in a DPW committee meeting back then. And Linda Mussman and I and Claudia and Ed Cross, we spray painted the crosswalk and got on the front pages of the paper. It was a very proud moment for me. The word rogue was in the headline. And then the clock goes forward. So that's 2019, right? 2023, I'm at the bus stop in front of Steiner's with my daughter, and city workers are screwing these aluminum signs that are meant to kind of look like a green light on the posts where a walk, don't walk sign would be.
Oh.
And that's the solution. It's like 5 years later, right? 5 years later, and an aluminum sign.
Yes.
And so that's the kind of solution that the city of Hudson produces, operating with a planning gap.
Yes. And the yellow lines on the sidewalks and the dying plants inside the sidewalk, the new sidewalk.
That's right. And that's like a new mayor is not going to change that. Charter reform is going to change that, and a deep commitment to getting planning capacity into the city and making it, giving us a structure that can work.
Is there time for new ideas in Hudson, or is it all going to be about fixing what's broken?
I think we're at a moment of repair. I think we're at a reform moment where we have to get our house in order, and we need to create the conditions for creativity to happen, because I think we keep trying to make this system do things it's not built to do. Do you know what I mean?
Interesting. Here's an idea from Rob at St. Florian. Speed bumps in every alley at every 15 feet. I think he's joking, but speed bumps in the alley.
That sounds like more like a entertainment, actually. But yeah. I mean, I think any idea is a good idea if we can kind of surface it. You know what I mean? I think solutions are easy. Everybody's got an idea how to solve something, but creating the conditions for everybody to see a solution and go, all right, that feels like a good idea. Let's try that. Yeah. That's the work, I think, is to just be like, okay, this is the problem. Hey, we're gonna try to solve something in the Alex. And then let's have everybody look at it, or give people a chance to look at the problem, and then create a space where we can talk about it. And then so that when we are moving, we move together. I mean, at the moment, I feel like these things, they come out of nowhere, and we all have no choice but to react. And so we're constantly reacting to things that are happening that we have no justification for.
Yeah.
So we're constantly.
The city is in flux. It feels like every 2 or 3 weeks there's big news. Galvin gives its entire portfolio to Bard, and before that it was the tax list came out of all the people with the back taxes, and there's like these scandals that happen every 3 weeks, and we're still constantly wheeling from them. Yeah. And I think they exist because of what you're talking about. There's a lack of structure, planning, all that, and these things just keep hitting us.
Yeah, and just communication too. I mean, I remember I always come back to this idea. There's this woman. I quote this woman. She did a TED Talk about semiotics, but she has this phrase about taking responsibility for being understood. And I think it's true that nobody at the moment is really taking responsibility for making the city understood in any meaningful way. And we all suffer because sometimes I say, the biggest problem in Hudson is its incoherence. It makes no sense. You know what I mean? So I feel like investing in making clear, regular communication is a big deal.
How would you communicate with the public if you were mayor?
I feel like I would keep doing a lot of what I'm doing now. I would set a pattern of in-person gatherings just to sort of signal real availability. I would get in the habit of citywide kind of conversations on topics, again, to create an opportunity for us to kind of know what's going on. But I feel like I would just sort of regularly share my sense of what's going on in the city and what's important and what's happening.
Well, you do those alley chats that are on Instagram, and you also put them on your website, I think, later. I think those are actually quite effective in that it's almost like I'm listening to you, having a conversation with you when I watch them, and it creates a personal thing. I think that's a great communication tool. I mean, it's kind of Orwellian, like, I am your mayor, look at the video. But at the same time, I think it's very effective, and it's very human, and you talk. And I'm like, oh yeah, I feel like I'm talking to you, which I don't think we get with the current, administration. Kamal's pretty good about communicating in some ways, but especially like the planning board, the Common Council. Nobody knows anything going on unless you read about it on Gossips of Rivertown. All of this is a mystery to me. Yes. It'd be great if there was more communication. People always use the word transparency, but it never quite happens.
No. And this is a big thing of why. I mean, so when 2018, when Future Hudson was happening, I don't know if you remember, but Rick Rector was the mayor. The youth budget, we were in the same position. There was assessments were being discussed. The youth department was looking like it was cost so much money, according to some people. He was reviewing a salary, and somebody threw a bag of dog shit at him in a meeting in City Hall.
One of the most, a turning point in our city's history.
That's right. And that was part of the spark for me to do Future Hudson, which was to try to help us have a conversation with each other. And so this is like a fixation of mine. And I think social media, Facebook, my use of Instagram is also a problem. I think the idea that we're having local conversations on these giant private social networks is bonkers. Mm-hmm. It's bonkers. And it's not healthy, and that we need to return to in-person stuff as much as we can, but we also need to create different ways of communicating digitally. And I'm a geek on this. There are people out there experimenting and innovating in sort of local digital kind of stuff. And I'm really interested in trying to be a place where that kind of thing happens, because the website we have for the city is unacceptable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the app, the hub, is also, it's a husk of a bad app. And I don't understand. And they're not old.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
I know. They're
not
brand
old.
new.
And they're utterly useless.
And there was the whole thing about the city forgetting to renew the domain name, and it expired, and the jokes were flying. Like, I don't quite agree with you. I think that the intersection of Facebook, if you like that, or Instagram, and all these things, and all the blogs and all the people writing, and also the in-person stuff, in a way it kind of works. It certainly worked in this last few years. There have been some positives.
Well, it's a positive.
Well, the charter change movement I found out about through Instagram, through the Hudson Whale and things like that, and through gossips of Rivertown. I mean, I think to build on that is important, but I wouldn't say to flesh out people only talking on Facebook and things like that. It's just how people communicate.
Oh, I don't disagree with you at all. Yeah. I think all I'm saying is that the line between sort of the civic and the personal, it all biases towards the personal, and we don't really have a civic space where we're interacting with each other. The government is able to interact.
And it's important too, because on the internet, people can be very mean and bold, and you can hide behind it. But in person, it's that thing of like you yell at people online on Instagram and stuff, and then you walk down Warren Street and you see them like, Everyone in Hudson's experience. Here's a good one from Evan Gorsman. Bike safety in Hudson is lacking. I know Peter has talked a lot about pedestrian infrastructure, but does he have plans to make bike lanes, close streets for people to walk and ride on for weekends, reroute to Empire State Trail to make it safer to pass through Hudson, and reroute gravel 18-wheelers to make to a better and safer place to commute by foot and bike? There's a lot there.
There's a lot there, but absolutely. I mean, I have, there's a few different ways I talk about what my platform is. One is to make Hudson more affordable, enjoyable, responsive, and resilient. And the enjoyable, I make enjoyable number two because of what I've said about the pandemic and how alienating that was for everybody and how isolated we are from everybody. But that I really want to commit. There's not a lot that we have a lot of money to do, but what I want to do is get a grant coordinator and really aim that grant seeking at like a citywide sort of pedestrian or transportation plan that would give us a way of solving for citywide mobility issues, which would give us a clear direction on intersections. You know what I mean? One of the problems with our things now is that every last intersection doesn't train you for the next intersection. We've got lights are on the side on one intersection, and then on the next one it's up above you, and then the next one's a stop sign. First-time users have no idea what's going on, and so yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think also one of my frustrations in living in Hudson is that I feel like I pay a lot in taxes and I don't really see a lot of basic city services. And so I want to make sure that we are doing what we can at the street level to make walking, biking, and being on sidewalks wonderful and fun and safe and feel proud. And also would invest. I mean, I was at the center of the summer, the shared streets. You know what I mean? So I think it's good. I would like to bring back the street dining.
I liked that, yeah.
I want to make it easy to have a block party. I feel like we should be using our public spaces for more gathering.
Here's a fantasy I have that relates to this. I would love for there to be, the Empire State Trail that runs behind in Greenport, that runs behind Walmart, and it's that concrete, and it's well done. It's pretty well done. Wouldn't it be great if there was one that went somehow, past down by the waterfront all the way to Fairview, like say ShopRite, that went through the woods and through the swamp and everything? I would think it'd be great to have something like that.
Yeah.
It's a distance, but it's doable, and it's all wilderness.
Yeah.
Take it away, Mayor.
Well, I feel like there actually is some sort of plan already on the books for the North Bay recreation area, actually, which sort of interacts with the landfill. And then that connects with the land to the conservancy. So there is an opportunity.
So there's a landfill on the way there.
The bottom of the second.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that thing. Yeah.
And that connects with all that stuff. So there has been conversation about connecting Hudson with the conservancy through that way, and the North Bay. And there's people in the room that probably know a lot better about that than I do.
So that leads me to my next question. I've heard you talk about this before, and I've heard other people talk about it. Do you think, what's the relation between Greenport and Hudson? Do you think they could come together at some point?
Oh, I mean, I feel like every idea in the book has been talked about at some point or another, at least in my experience. So certainly people have talked about merging Greenport and Hudson. Hudson is distinct in how small, how constrained it is, the 2 square miles. I only learned this past year, for those who don't know, that I feel like Greenport was created because somebody that was living in the city of Hudson way back in the 19th century or something didn't want to pay Hudson city taxes.
Oh.
So just drew a line around Hudson.
Really?
All the rest Greenport, and built a beautiful house up on Mount Marina. And so, and we've had the relationship that we have kind of ever since in some weird way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know how to directly answer that question. But yeah, the relationship, I feel like we need to find ways to partner with everybody. You know what I mean? We've got Hudson in Greenport and then in Columbia County, and every one of those relationships has its challenges. But we need a lot of help. So like trying to find ways to partner is a good idea.
Well, I know many of the successful businesses on Warren Street, the people who own them that have been around forever live in Greenport, and then they just come to work, and many people that we love and things like that. What's next?
I don't know. So thank you very much. So what I thought I would do, if you guys have questions from the audience, we could do that. And there's a mic here if you want to come up and ask the question, or you can just shout it out. And then I also thought that if there were time and willingness, that there might be an opportunity to do kind of a town hall thing where we're not actually asking questions, we're just we choose a topic and everybody can kind of share their point of view, and that would give us an opportunity to hear each other and just listen to how everybody in the room might feel about a given topic without the pressure of having to respond or to come up with a weird question.
What are you talking?
Do you know when the Galvin exit officially kicks in?
I do not. I don't think we have any details. The most clarity I have on the issue is that they're all in the process of a few months of due diligence, and that I have a relationship with people at the Hanover Rent Center at Clark College, and I reached out to them for any insight, and they said, there's a few months of due diligence, and it would be improper to say otherwise before.
Well, I think what's on a lot of people's minds, it's on my mind, is the list of, because it's not just the entire portfolio of buildings. If you don't know, Galvin, the developer around here, has gifted their entire portfolio of real estate to Bard College, which is over there. And at first I thought it was the entire thing, every building they own, which is tons of them. But I think it's interesting to think what will be on the list and what won't.
Yeah, and I think they put a number on it. Did they say 50 million?
Yeah.
Which is, you get to 50 million really quick if you just include the library.
Well, why wouldn't they just give the library to the city? Why do you think Galvin didn't gift their portfolio to Hudson, instead did to Bard?
I can hypothesize. I think that Bard needed it. They've partnered with Bard before. I think Eric Galloway was looking for a way out, and Bard has been a good partner to them. And other than that, I don't know.
Well, there is the argument that Bard is such an artistic and cultural place that it would shine that sort of light onto the buildings that they have been gifted in our own city, whereas the city might do things that are more business oriented. I've heard that.
Was the question, why would they give it to Bard and not the city?
Correct. Oh. Perhaps that was a good move. I don't know. It's a theory.
Yeah.
So with the armory then, which is the library, who pays the maintenance on that building? They just simply, Bard will now simply allow them to be there?
Yeah, so all of that is completely unknown. What Bard has said is that what we don't know is how many buildings, how much of Galvin's portfolio is actually going to be given to Bard and how much they're going to hold on to. What Bard has said is whatever they get, they're not going to use for student housing. It's likely they might sell a bunch, but there's just we have no clarity on what they might do.
Because, we put a great deal of effort into getting the library into that building.
Yeah.
That went on for a decade, yeah. Well, and it's interesting if they do liquidate things, and is it going to be what's left? They're going to gift back to Hudson. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
they're not going to liquidate the armory, I don't think. So is that just go back to us, or does Bard going to keep it? Or
Yeah, these are all open questions, and there's definitely. I feel like a lot of it. It seems like it happened very fast. I think there were lots of people that did not know it was coming.
the mayor claims he read about it in the paper.
Yeah, I think there were Galvan employees that were also surprised by it. Yeah.
Well, as a public library actor, that really troubles me. And the effort, it should, at the least, know the city.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it might be good for some things because Galvin has a history of acquiring these properties and then they just sit there. Like the Maria and Abramovic thing, which is another story about Hudson. When I moved here, the Maria and Abramovic performance thing was a big deal, and everyone thought Hudson was going to be this like, holy shit, it's like, and then that just faded away in the worst way possible, and then Galvin bought it, and it's just sitting there. Yeah. I think they've done a lot of work on it. What's the building I'm thinking of? The performance place over there on Union Street. Yeah, Helsinki, thank you. Like, they bought that and it's just sitting there. That was a great space when it was open, and I forget their names who ran it, but that would be a great thing that somebody should acquire. And I feel like a lot of these buildings are empty because Galvin, it's like they have an office and they run real estate. They don't have time to run a theater. It like almost boils down to that. Like, it'd be nice if they just handed it or sold it or whatever to somebody else and they could take over. Yeah.
My overall read is sort of more Bard College investment or presence in Hudson is a good thing, and less Galvan investment and presence in Hudson is a good thing, and so it's a plus. Hugo?
These are easy ones. First, thank you for doing this. Really helpful. Like, this is a great thing to do as a mayor, and it's hard to run for mayor. So thank you, Peter. It's very hard. First question is, on the previous one, there is a Soros match to Bar because they raise a certain amount of money, and people have said that that's one of the reasons why Galvin gave the money to Soros to unlock like another 250 million or something.
500.
Oh, 500, yeah, exactly. So there's a whole bigger money play there and could unlock more capital for the area, which could be arguably a good thing. Okay, so you're my three questions on areas that I think you really like. Okay, so the first one is on urban planning. You bike around a lot, which is amazing, and you're a great advocate for walking around. Do you own a car? That's question one. So fan favorite question I was asked. Two is, why do you think citizen assemblies have taken off in Europe to a large part, but not as much in America? And the third question is, if you had to cut one city department, which one would you cut? So like a crazy thought experiment, like of the 5 or 6, I don't know the departments there are, but you get to cut one and you have to create a new one. Which one would you cut and which one would you create?
Why don't we take all three one at a time? The first one was...
Do you own a car? Are you like the perfect Dutch man? And
I love the fact that people think I live here without a car, but no, I had
It's possible.
I had
The coexist bumper sticker.
I have a 2014 Prius.
I was hoping, like your fans were hoping you're putting out the light and outs in that car. That's because no one can do that in America, basically, right? Anywhere except like San Francisco.
Yeah.
Again, that says in New York.
So the second one, I just challenged the assertion that citizens' assemblies are taking off here. I know
In Europe, they take off in Europe, not in America.
Right, that's what I'm challenging. I'm challenging that they're in fact happening here in America, and that we can be a part of it.
What are some examples?
So most recently, there's a group called Healthy Democracy in Oregon, and they just did the New Yorker wrote a piece about it. They did a citizens' assembly on youth homelessness for the county of Deschutes in Oregon. And I have all these links on my Instagram.
Is it near Portland?
I'm not sure where it is exactly. Cambridge, Mass. is making, they just went through a charter review commission process, and as part of their charter review, they recommended, let me start back. So Citizens Assembly is a form of deliberative democracy that My People's Charter Reform would use to reform the city charter. And Citizens Assembly is how Ireland made gay marriage and abortion illegal. And what it does is it uses a civic lottery, like a jury. It works like a jury. So you randomly select a truly representative group of people, and then they meet over an extended period of time and are supported through a process. So they get educated on the issues, and they get facilitated through conversation, and then they get led to a rough consensus on recommendations. And I think it's the most beautiful idea I've encountered, given the amount of division that we have, the amount of distrust that we have, that we could have a strong space where people who wouldn't normally come together actually have to listen to each other and make recommendations about the best outcome for the city. And Citizens Assembly Hannah Arendt Center at Bard College has a Democratic Innovation group, and I went to a summer workshop with a bunch of people there. And it's absolutely a movement that's growing. People are clamoring for new ways of doing democracy that are more representative, more inclusive, and that we've been trapped in this sort of zero-sum majoritarian game where you only get just need to get 50 votes plus one, and every decision produces losers, and it gets boring. And so Citizens Assembly offers an opportunity to do democracy differently, and it's an advantage and opportunity we have at the local level. It's almost like the one thing we can do to rebuild trust more broadly and to come back into a process of civic engagement, civic renewal, which is my deepest idealist self. We can begin. And then the last question was about if I were to get rid of a department.
If you had to hypothetically as a full experiment, and I'll ask all the candidates this, cut one department and add one department. You could add any city department. You can add and cut any one of the current 5.
Yeah, I mean, what comes to me right now, I don't have a clear answer on what I might cut. But I was reading, there's a planner, his name is Justin Garrett Moore, I think, and he's talked about trying to create a department of care. And it was his way of describing what's needed. It's almost like just a new way of thinking about parks and public space, that we would create a department of care that actually, orients money, time, and attention to taking care of the spaces that we share. And I think we really need that. I mean, I think our parks, we all know this, you know what I mean, that we need to pay more attention to our shared spaces, and it would be wonderful if we had a department that was devoted to that. We spend $400,000 a year mowing the cemetery out there, right? And we have our parks in the city are a wreck, you know what I mean? And our sidewalks are a wreck. So I guess that would be my answer.
It feels like the 7th Street Park has so many problems, and it's taking forever for them to renovate it. Why?
I think they're just struggling to get money.
It's a matching grant for the park?
I don't know the specifics on it, but that is something. I mean, I feel like part of my experience in the city of Hudson is that the city doesn't actually end up doing all that much. Things that get done are done by the state, like the DRI, all the intersections and all that stuff at the Second Ward, those new curb cuts, all that stuff. That's state. That's a state program that made that happen.
Right.
Or it's private foundations, which we see with, Galvin's some stuff.
Well, what about the Oakdale Playground grant?
And that's city stuff.
That was city stuff with state money.
It's a state grant.
But Peter Frank got a grant from an outside. It's a state grant they got for that playground. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or volunteers. I was going to finish that thought. Or volunteers do amazing work in Hudson, and it's been true. The Friends of Oakdale brought Oakdale back to life, and we see this with the
Lloyd with his rake. Yeah.
And the Friends of the Public Square at 7th Street Park. That's all volunteer effort.
Well, Rich Volo was telling me that he could get more work done with the tree planting. I forget the name of the group he had, that they were planting trees in all the sidewalks around. Yeah. He's like, if I was, mayor or something, I could never get that done. It was just this group of people. I forget where the funding came from. It wasn't a lot. And they just were literally going around planting trees, and everything was, kosher. It was fine. Yeah. So he's like,
yes,
that's a lesson to be learned, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, Peter, I'm extremely pleased that somebody as educated and articulate as you are sitting there and running for mayor and bringing these issues onto the street and to the people. So I too want to thank you for that. I've been to a few Hudson meetings in the course of my 10 or 12 years here, so I'm just going to drop this one on you. Not once did I hear the word waterfront. There's something about the waterfront.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the waterfront is. It's a giant opportunity. It's like the crown jewel of the city of Hudson. That we're a river city. We're on the river. You know what I mean? Everything about Hudson is connected to the river. I love the river. Waterfront West is one of my favorite things in the world that I do. I could get emotional flying there, just going down there with being with my daughter. Yeah, we are one of a very, very small number of communities, I think, in the whole state that has sort of an unresolved local waterfront revitalization plan. You know what I mean? We haven't actually fully completed this process of shifting from the waterfront as a place of industrial waste and use into a place of recreation and open space. And this is the limbo of Hudson, where it seems to me people hadn't been willing to pick that up. It's another one of those issues that feels so confusing that when you look at it, it kind of changes a bit. But yeah, we need to have a clear vision for the for the waterfront. It's another one of the reasons that we need actual leadership in City Hall. I mean, the planning board's treatment of Colarusso application is a real problem and a failure to adequately represent the interests of the city of Hudson. And I think it's probably worth saying that I'm running to be mayor of the city of Hudson, not Greenport, and the interests at the waterfront are our interests. And this idea of positive vision of growth is also true. I tell this story, and when I talk to people, I tell this story about how I remember being told that scientists had proven that bumblebees can't fly. You know what I mean? That their wings are strong enough to support their body. And so science kind of says that bumblebees are impossible. And I think that Hudson is impossible in a similar way, in part because we are 2 square miles and 40 to 50% of our land is untaxed. And so we're kind of we're trying to run a full city on really, really limited revenue. And we don't often talk about that fact. And it takes a while of paying attention. I think you're getting involved to sort of see the implications of that struggle, and that everybody that's working in Hudson to make it better is working really, really hard, and they're pushing the system as much as they can, but we don't have a lot of juice. And so all a way of saying that every decision we make about every square inch or square mile of the city is vital, is important. And so that we need to be extremely strategic about how we use our land, and that means being very strategic about the waterfront and making sure that we put people first, and that we plan for a future.
Just off the cuff, how do you think the Colarusso waterfront controversy is going to end?
I think the planning board at the moment is in the hands of people who are sympathetic to Colarusso, and that they will likely compromise and disappoint residents of the city of Hudson.
That's how you think it's going to end currently. 100%. If you were mayor right now, would you try to change that? And if so, how would you?
Well,
maybe preemptively.
Well, I mean, I think this is part of that idea of setting a vision.
Right.
You know what I mean? And when I talk about Mayor Johnson, I talk about an absence of leadership. It's not a lack of leadership, it's an absence. That there's no voice indicating which direction we're supposed to be going, or he wants to go, or anything. And I think that costs us quite a bit. So, I mean, I would make it very clear that Colarusso is a Greenport company. We love them, and we are neighbors, but that the waterfront is for for residents of the city of Hudson, and that they need to accept real conditions on the operations at the dock. 100%. It's ridiculous that this needs to be articulated that way, but it needs to be articulated this way because the planning board is currently operating, I think, with an inappropriate bias to colors.
Well, it circles back to what you said and what many people have said about how other people are watching. You know, other entities, businesses, small and large, are looking at the way things transpire in Hudson, and they're saying, no, no thanks. I don't want to, I don't want to go somewhere where they're going to have gravel dust in the new park because the structure of the government is leaning towards this. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. That's right.
It's a real problem.
Yes.
You reminded me,
Go ahead.
you reminded me of some of the question I had. It might be a little naive when you talked about the taxes and how burdened we are with that issue. Galvan, we all know, is a foundation, and they have this pilot thing, and that's why everyone's taxes went up over the last 10, 11 years. But now, this very, very rich, small, liberal arts, well-endowed college, what kind of taxes do they pay?
In Hudson?
Will they pay, and do they? I mean, are they under a special college? I don't know. Are they not for profit?
Yeah. Well, the one thing I'll say about this is that when I was trying to figure out, are there any other places that look like us? You know what I mean? That have this same kind of hole right in the middle of the economy. And what I found was that most of them are college towns, and they have colleges in them.
For example,
What's that?
Williams in Williamstown. I mean, little tiny town, fabulous, rich college, lots of rich kids. Same thing.
New Paltz is
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. So.
It's a state college.
So in a lot of those college towns, even though they're not for profits that they negotiate, often there are payments that they'll make. There are relationships that they'll get into that are financial because they recognize their not for profit status might be a burden on the city, but they also bring a lot of economic activity with them too. So
Okay. And I went to high school with Leon Botstein. He's an old chum. So if you need any.
yeah, give us the hookup.
You had a question?
I did. I am on the Individuals with Developmental Disabilities Subcommittee, and our leader of all the Community Services Board, the Mental Health Association, Della Massey, is very happy with the new building that's going up on North 7th Street. Now, I don't know if you know that I'm a resident that's currently now between Clinton and Washington on 5th. But what I see as a just regular Joe Schmo, if I'm gonna put my Joe Schmo hat on, is we have that fire company on North 7th Street, and there's a sign, historically the oldest fire company in town. But then there's an old factory that's been under construction for who knows how many years, and then there's a piece of land with 2 old houses that were chopped down. And then I moved to Hudson 12 years ago because it was smaller than Brooklyn. Because I come from Europe. All the buildings were only 4 stories because I never made it down to the Bliss Towers. And then we now have this brand new building that's 5 stories high. And and it will have commercial businesses there, which is the mission. But what I see when I'm walking down Clinton and then going up towards the firehouse is that they've literally chopped down trees to build a parking lot. And I guess I'm thinking, I guess the short answer is Oakdale protecting, or is our goal for growth, or we'd have to start building skyscrapers and instead of just our 4-story buildings.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the question, Kai. I share the same sort of concerns that and this gets back to the conversation you had about reforming the code and form-based code, is that we can enter into a process where we define the shape of kind of what we want. And I'm speaking, again, I'm sort of not way over my skis. I'm not a professional planner, but that we need to go through this process of getting towards form-based code so that we can grow in a Hudson way. At the moment, it's all sort of ad hoc, and we're sort of improvising all the time. And I think we just need to sort of streamline that process and articulate some constraints on what it means to build a building at Hudson and what it means to be to avoid skyscrapers, certainly, and to make sure that we have public space, open space, and parks that are preserved, that put residents first. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm very new here, and one of the things that I'm interested in is the diversity. There's an African American population, there's a Bangladeshi population. How do you see reaching and bridging those communities?
Yeah, I mean, I think bridging, I love that word. I mean, I feel like I need to learn how to bridge. I feel like we all need to learn how to bridge. I'm absolutely committed to that. And that's a part of my commitment to sort of civic engagement, is just creating opportunities for us to come together.
So maybe some of your conversations could be centered, or focused on bringing them to listen to and your ideas, and to hear from them how they might become more civically engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. For the past, I think it's a month, might be more than that, happened maybe 6 weeks. Every Sunday from 4 to 6, I've been sort of camping out at a park somewhere or a public space. 2 of those Sundays were at Bliss Towers, where I sit at Bliss. I live a block away from Bliss. I'm in that neighborhood all the time. I'm familiar to my neighbors at Bliss. They're familiar to me. I live at Robinson Street, which is sort of the heart of Bangladesh communities there. It was poor stores are friends. And so I'm very much in that world.
Were they coming to meet you?
I mean, I'm going to do as much as I can, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How
Do
do
you have
you-
any suggestions on what I might do to make that possible?
Well, I was just thinking that maybe, I hear that you are taking intention and deliberate steps, since you have a number of these meetings, and maybe this space, doesn't feel as accessible or a part of their community as if you could be near the mosque or something like that. I feel like they're kind of sequestered, but also open. When I walk down the alley, they're so friendly, the families that are gardening and everything. Like, how do we...
And they vote.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's a tall order. I mean, I'll be very honest with you. Deep in my heart, I want to make that happen.
He did go to Bliss Towers, for 2 of his...
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I just wonder what your experience is. Do they feel excluded or uncomfortable, or not invited, or intimidated, or
What do you think?
Well, what did you
my
experience?
sense is that they not necessarily seeing themselves in the campaign, perhaps that maybe if there could be some way to form a little coalition or somebody that is a link to...
Yeah, absolutely.
How did the ones at Bliss Towers go?
They were great.
People came?
What did you hate from that?
I was there. Yeah.
You fill me in.
Peter, you've done such an excellent job going to different parts of the city and inviting folks to come to you. I think many of the challenges we're discussing today are national challenges. Cost of housing is not only a Hudson problem. Billion-dollar foundations not paying taxes locally is, so all this, everyone in Hudson says, this is our unique problem. No, all these problems many of them are national problems. And you're wanting to help make them less bad locally, which I really respect, I like that you talked about immigrants, business owners, choices people make, not how they are born. Because, this is ultimately is America, and this is a melting pot, and the city is almost exactly as diverse as the nation, if you look at the demographics, which is incredible, which is not common in upstate New York. Yeah. I appreciate you bringing that up, and I will certainly do everything I can to make that bridge and make it, and try to connect it.
Well, Mayor Kamal's run, the administration, America, has brought a lot of these issues into sharp focus for I think everybody. So that's been I think a very positive thing. I mean, in some ways positive, but it's brought it into sharp focus, unignorable focus.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's true.
Hager, is Instagram the only place to know about these meetings? Because I would have come to this, but I didn't know about it. And I see your posts all.
I have you can sign up for an email, which will, at the moment, you're right, yes. Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna be at 7th Street Park tomorrow.
Check your spam folder.
Mark.
What? I'm sorry. It was a suggestion. I'm sorry.
7th Street is tomorrow,
Yeah, 4 to 6.
4 to 6.
Yeah.
I saw your postcard in the Bengali store
Oh yeah.
yesterday.
Yeah, nice. Oh, glad.
Did you put it there?
Yeah, I put that there. Nice.
So, Peter, and bring it back to one of your favorite topics, the citizen assemblies. So, if you could, assuming you were to be elected mayor in November, and there's a chance, if you could, I think there is only a limited number of citizen assemblies that can be created at a time in Hudson. I'm sure you agree with that. If you could create one, what would you make it about? Would you make it about charter reform or creating an LWRP, local waterfront revitalization plan, perhaps?
Yeah.
Which would you?
Charter reform, absolutely. And just to be clear, I have a proposal from the Hannah Arendt Center at Bard College and Healthy Democracy, which is.
I'm asking because the next Common Council president also has a plan to do charter reform, but I think hers is different. So you may have to do some finagling to get that sorted out.
We're in an interesting position now where all the candidates agree that the problems are structural and there's a need for real, deep, meaningful charter reform. And so the question becomes, how do we do it, right? And the choices that are available to us now are the conventional way, which is a charter review commission, and the mayor can do that, the common council person can do that. And a charter review commission is basically a political appointees. Think about it, city charter by political appointees, right? So it's a political process, and it's fun. That's how people do it. Cambridge, Mass did it that way. The people's charter reform, I prefer to think of it, is actually being city charter by the people, and it's 20 to 36 randomly selected Hudson residents who deliberate over 4 to 6 days to make recommendations about the best possible government for the city of Hudson. And I think it's a meaningful difference. Yeah, and then the other beautiful thing, to go back to Cambridge, and I tell this story this way, my daughter is 8, and it's possible that through a charter reform process, we could initiate every 2 years or every 4-year resident assembly in which when you register to vote, so I can imagine that when my daughter registers to vote at age 18, she's entered into a lottery, which makes her available to participate in a resident assembly every 4 years, in which case she would be seated at a table over a 3-day process with a totally, truly representative mix of her neighbors, right? And she would be able to have a voice on whatever the most significant question the city is asking itself. And that for me is just an absolutely beautiful opportunity. And again, I discovered Citizens Assembly at this workshop at Bard. This guy, Peter McLeod, who's been doing this in Canada for a very long time. He described Citizens Assembly as the manufacture of democratic integrity. It's a wonky quote, but what it does is it makes governing collaborative. It makes it regenerative. It makes it something that builds trust and strengthens community. Whereas my experience of Hudson, every decision is a source of conflict and division, where there are losers and there are winners. But there's a different way of doing democracy, and we have an opportunity to do it here in Hudson in the most American way, which is answering the question of how do we want to be governed? You know what I mean? Do we want the mayor? Do we want a city manager? How many council members do we want? What's the term limits? Do we need commissioners? Do you want a different department? These are questions that everyday people could actually answer for us. I think it's just gorgeous.
What's the difference? I mean, juries were supposed to be that, peers making decisions, and And yet, if you go to jury selection, everybody's trying not to serve.
Yeah, it's a good point. I was thinking that.
Who, when you say it's a random selection, is it out of a pool of people who expressed interest already?
No, it's a new form of civic duty. You know what I mean? It really is. And absolutely, people are not always interested in participating in jury duty. The Citizens Assembly, what they do is they provide childcare, they provide a stipend. So you're sort of paid, you're sort of reimbursed or incentivized to participate. In that way, it honors the role of the citizen in a way that we really don't elsewhere, and creates a strong space where a shared understanding could be built, and decisions that are easier to trust can be built, because we trust decisions made by people more than we trust decisions made by politicians. More.
I think you mentioned earlier with the Citizens Assembly that the people participating in them would somehow be educated on the issues. Who does that education? Where are the people, where are the subject matter experts coming from to allow people who may not be informed on issues to weigh in?
So the work of the Citizens Assembly, this group, Healthy Democracy, they run them and they facilitate them. And they would create sort of a stakeholder group of residents of the city of Hudson, and collaboratively, they would develop a curriculum, basically, of experts that the assembly would call to sort of address it. An example of this was the Irish Citizens Assembly on Abortion. They created a curriculum of all these different pro-abortion, every side of the issue represented. Those members of every side of the issue came and addressed the assembly, answered their questions, told them why they thought that way, what their issues were, and they heard all sides. And so there's a curriculum development process that identifies the experts, and then the assembly draws on them to orient themselves around the issue. Does that answer your question?
It does. I mean, in principle, it sounds wonderful in an era in which there's an enormous amount of disinformation and where facts are being weighed equally against things that are just completely baseless and poorly informed, which sway many people. It seems like it could be a mess, but in principle, I love the idea.
Yeah, there's a book about it. It's called Democracy When the People Are Thinking. And it really, it sort of just says if we create the space for people to learn, people make good decisions if we create the conditions for them to know the situation. And so it's a way that we can, we talk about how we don't trust institutions, but there's ways in which institutions don't trust people. And this is a way we can actually trust each other with significant decisions by creating a space to have these kinds of deliberative conversation. Mostly because we've been trained to kind of just, we show up at election time and we flip a switch and then we wait to be disappointed. You know what I mean? I mean, this is one of those reasons I have the benefit of running as an independent, because this system has consistently been pretty disappointing. And at the local level, I think we have a unique opportunity to do it differently. It's one of the primary reasons I felt confident enough to step up to run for mayor, is because I felt like this was an idea that I could carry to you, that wasn't just about me wanting to be mayor.
Well, timing-wise, it's very interesting, because in the last few years in Hudson, there has been an uprising of communication that I think has led to the kind of sea change we mentioned earlier. A lot of it has been electronically on blogs and memes and stuff, what you're talking about, misinformation, but at least there have been a lot of people who have woken up and are talking. So there's worth in that, pointing that out, I think.
Yeah, it's true. Does anybody have any other? Yeah, Shanan.
Peter, there's a lot of citizen assembly stuff and conversations, and I think taking it left or going back to something that every candidate has talked about, affordability. Not one of you have said how. I don't understand, like, hey, yeah, we need a more affordable place. It's a national problem, it's a global problem. But in a 2 square mile city that has only so many housing, we don't want to build up, we don't want to build the skyscraper. We want to keep the historic, visibility of Hudson. Hudson doesn't own any property, really, and they sold it all, well, most of it. How do you make it affordable? The average age is 41. I can't even get a bartender. You got me here. I don't know that my taxes on this building alone, because I wanted to be a for-profit to support my community. I don't see my community supporting me. So how it work? My $20,000 in taxes or $15,000, whatever it is, whatever that number. How do you make it more affordable?
Yeah, I mean, I think we grow. This is why I'm talking about a positive vision to make Hudson livable for 10,000. I mean, I feel like what I've been told and what I understand is true is that the only real solution to affordability is oversupply. You know what I mean? And so we make it easy to build and easy to grow. And I also feel like we talk usually about affordability through this very singular lens of housing, but we don't really talk about economic development. And I feel like what I want to do is really be aggressive about economic development and strategic about economic development and try to bring new business here to grow the taxes. I mean, that's how I would answer that question. I don't know how that hits.
That's why Dan was happy with building that's going up near 7th Street Fire Hydrant, because as a head social worker of everything in Columbia Green counties, he couldn't get social workers to work for him because no one had any place to live.
Sure. That's everybody's problem. That's a real problem. Right. So and building more is fine, right? But if I look at what Galvin did, right? Besides knocking down buildings he wasn't supposed to knock down, that he can't build the affordable housing. Those prices are $1,700 to $3,300.
So,
I don't know how you define affordable.
right.
Right? If you look at what a business like mine can pay a worker that can't afford to live here. Period. Right? And so yeah, building more is great, but what are we making?
Yeah.
Well, and there's been a lot of corruption, presenting things as affordable housing, and then surprise, it's not.
Yeah, I'll take a pilot.
Yeah.
I'll take a pilot, and then it's not affordable anymore.
It's bait and switch. I mean,
Yeah. So where with that problem as mayor, where in the new planning strategy helps that problem? It's basically contractors who are big business people figuring out a way to sell something as one thing and then present it as another purely for profit, and the town loses.
Yeah.
How do you stop that?
Say the last part again?
How do you stop the deception, I imagine? Yeah, the bait and switch, big business running the show.
Well, this is, I think, I feel like we've had one way of trying to solve this problem in place for a long time, and we've seen that it doesn't work, which is sort of asking for subsidies and dealing with big developers. And we've been sort of, kind of captive by Galvin in a lot of ways. And, people have been pointing at this as being unacceptable for a long time. So this is an opportunity for us to really think, to sort of just start a different way of doing this. And so for me, that means, we need to invite different kinds of developers here who are willing to do what we want to do and really develop within the square of Hudson at every price point, to try to bring housing of all types into Hudson. Where was a thought that just all left my head?
Well, when you say bring in the kind of developers you want to bring in, don't you think that perhaps people were saying that 5 or 6 or 7 years ago?
I think people have been saying everything for a long time.
But so how do you stop? You mentioned in your talking about civic design, gentle density.
Right.
To me, that leans more towards, and you talked about incentives to help local builders change their own properties. To me, that leans more towards, lower rents, more, logical rents, and not a corporate. Talk about that. Can you talk about that? Gentle density and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So, gentle density is a term of art that was developed over the past maybe 10 years, maybe a little bit more than that, to recognize that when that there's a problem in development when you introduce very large developments into a community. Those human beings have a reaction that is very often negative, and they get called NIMBYs, but they're really just human beings who are sort of having a normal human reaction to transformational development and big change that's happening around them that's beyond their control. And so gentle density is this recognition that maybe we should care for our neighbors in the way that we develop and the way that we grow, and that we can be gentle about it. And it's language that was used in the city's affordable housing plan as a primary objective. And it's one of them that they just failed on. That's one of the reasons I've opposed the Mill Street development, and why the city's consistently built their platform on promising affordable housing, and they just haven't delivered over and over and over again. And it's not, and it's at the cost of the relationships in the community, because it pits neighbor against neighbor, and it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary division, and it's possible there are ways of doing this in a way that isn't as disruptive or as divisive. And gentle density is a way of doing that. And a lot of this stuff, we just redid the comprehensive plan, and there's a ton of recommendations in there. Our code, our way of doing things is so old. A boilerplate set of recommendations is great, and we need to take them and implement them so that we can grow differently.
I feel like a good solution is helping local business owners in a general sense, having access to funds to renovate their own buildings and rent them out. I know that that's not always going to work, but there's a lot of people who own buildings around here that are just empty, not just Galvin, they're falling apart and what have you. I feel like if there was an incentive for people to, have access to money to renovate them and rent them out that might be a kind of a solution. I feel like, sidestep the giant corporations. I don't know.
I know Coark had a shop in town, and they literally had to move, or he closed down their shop because the rents got too high. And again, I own a private one family home. I don't own one of the buildings that have, retail in it. So that's the thing. Instead of, I'm assuming that the owners who own buildings on Warren Street can't make, rent affordable because of the costs of keeping the houses. I mean, I'm going to be full disclosure. I moved to Hudson because it was 2 square miles, and because I'm a handicapped woman, and the first thing I saw was Camp Hill and Coark.
Yeah.
And over the last 12 years, Coark was in 3 different places. I think on what I call Zero Block, which is between Front Street and First, and in a few, maybe another place. Camp Hill is, and then way up at top. Coark is 110% gone. And Camp Hill is still here. But there shouldn't. But it's, but we're, from my perspective, and I know I'm a minority, we're losing a part of our personality. And I don't know if it's only because the retail space is too intensive.
Yeah. Well, we've got a little bit of time left. If we had time left, we were meant to be here till 4, and I had always intended to have some space where we could just listen to each other. It's not necessarily a Q&A. This topic of affordability is a giant issue, to your point. Do you want to just maybe spend the next 15 minutes, if anybody has stuff they want to share about affordability, they can just speak and we can just hear each other's point of view? Does that feel like a useful...
I said sure.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Lloyd.
Well, I kind of feel like we are moving in the direction of affordability. And let's not lose sight of the progress that is being made. And we're not going to get to a point where Shanan can solve all those problems immediately, but you got the JLE project. You're looking at rents for seniors, $1,100, $1,300. How many people are going to go in there? They're over 100? I don't recall the number off the top of my head. So for seniors, if that project's able to go through, that will help. Okay, so that's one aspect. I mean, I think part of what happened with Galvin, now they've been in discussions with Bard for quite a while, right? Now Galvin, right, wrong, or indifferent, probably has been part of the problem, and then move Hudson more and more away, and the vacancy, housing as part of that has been like a major aspect of the problem here. So in analyzing, all of this, I think what happened with Galvin, apparently Kamal was surprised, and they supposedly were good buddies, but they weren't talking to each other. So I think this points to your thing about Kamal not being present. He wasn't even present with his buddies Calvin Valpy. So for him to be surprised. But anyway, what I see that happened with Galvin is you had the election, right? So if they were in talks with Bard all that time, and then the election happened, and Tom got trounced, and we probably have a new common council president that is maybe less pro Galvin. So Galvin's seeing the handwriting on the wall, right?
Yeah.
And then there was an idea. So quite interestingly, I was in attendance at the last IDA meeting in which Margaret initiated a conversation about the affordability bait and switch over at 7th Street. And they're like, what do we do about this? Well, I think what you do is you sue, and, false representation, and you look for damages and hold Galvin accountable because they're big, they've got pockets, right? I'm just saying that. And for them to want to take advantage in the way they do instead of contribute to the community is shameful. Shameful. So, getting back to the IDA meeting. So I think part of Galvin's is set reasoning behind like slapping the face to the city. I mean, they could have given the properties to the city, no? They didn't do that. And that's a big ass. That's a big ass. But if Kamal had a great relationship with Galvin, that could have happened. No, didn't happen. Bard. So was that a slap in the face to the city? Galvin, didn't get what they wanted. So now so when Margaret initiated this conversation about the affordable housing issues and the rents, the $3,000 plus rent, dollar a month rent, and then she, questioned the IDA. Mike wasn't there. Mike wasn't at the meeting, Cutter, but she questioned the ID. Kamal's chairing, right? Kamal's chairing the IDA meeting. So she questioned it, and then Heather started to ask questions, about and then mentioned clawing back monies. So, you got to punish these offenders. So if Galvin's an offender, you hold them to task. And, and if we're afraid to hold these big interests to task, then, you deserve what you get. Anyway, so then part of this, the third person that spoke, I'm almost done.
Okay.
I'm just going to wrap this up in a second, right? The third person, I spoke, and I asked what was the process for, addressing the fact and how would you claw back? So their lawyer went through the process and how it would work. Interestingly enough, right after that meeting, the decision from Galvin to sell or transfer properties to Bard happened. So coincidental? I don't know. I don't think so. I think they just saw the handwriting on the wall, and I think we're moving away from the age of Galvin. Wherever we go in the future, that's up to us to steer the ship.
Thank you, Lee.
Mark?
Hi, my name is Mark. I got a place here in Hudson over on 400 Buck of State Street in 2013. My work has been in affordable housing development and finance for over 20 years. When I was in Hudson the first time, I served on the planning board and the HDC board, and I guess, affordable housing is Pandora's box, but first thing is to define what is affordability. The actual definition of affordability, not my definition, but by the federal government, and when funding programs are put together for affordable housing, is that the resident doesn't pay more than 30% of their gross income in housing costs. So that's one metric. People may like it or not like it, but when we talk about affordability, there has to be a base guideline so that we're on the same page. Affordability is also connected to area median incomes, which in Hudson are defined by Columbia County median incomes. And so 100% of area median income is middle of where half of the people in Columbia County earn above that, the half earn below that. And then you have low-income housing, which is anything below 80% area median income. Below 50% is very low income. Below 30% is extremely low income. It all gets very technical, which is why building affordable housing is really complicated and linked to funding streams. And I guess I could babble on about this forever, but in the sense of maybe adding some clarity to your discussion, years ago when I was volunteering for HDC, I wanted to address this question, that affordability of Hudson. So I actually counted. I went out and I counted using public records and driving around how many affordable units there were in Hudson. Affordable being defined as units that were not market rate. The number ended up being between 20 and 22%. Approximately 1 in 5 units in Hudson. So again, is that too many, too much affordability in Hudson, or too little affordability? And then you also have the issue with what kind of affordability and where affordability is. So affordability has often been concentrated on the north side of Hudson, in particular areas where extremely low-income people are concentrated and sort of not included in the rest of Hudson. So that's a problem as well. Galvin did some work to address that, but Galvin I also did an inventory of Galvin properties and what they do with that, which kind of was very confusing. They seemed to sort of give with one hand and do amazing things, and then kind of take with the other and warehouse properties and let them fall down. So I didn't really arrive at a conclusion on that, and I don't want to take up more time. But again, to facilitate the discussion on affordability, affordability is driven by not spending more than 30% of gross income in rent, and by what Columbia County's area median income is, not what the city of Hudson's area median income is, which is lower.
Is there a sort of a common sense approach to make Hudson more affordable that you can explain in less than 2 minutes?
Another thing is people think there's not enough land in Hudson to build. There is enough land in Hudson. Hudson used to have a population of about 12,000 people at its peak. So there is enough land with infill building at no more than 4 stories to, I think, reach the 10,000 mark. I think I have to, do an analysis, but I think there is, without talking about high-rise.
A lot of that housing went away when you took a 3-unit house or a 4-unit house and made it a 1 family. So I'm not sure that I would agree with that statement, that there's enough land. Unless you start knocking down historic buildings and building 4 stories and making 4 units in a building.
There actually is quite a lot of vacant land distributed through the city of Hudson, and a lot of infill parcels which are infilled. And then there's also ADU development, which is, turning a lot of the buildings that are in the alleys into dwelling units. And again, whether or not those buildings can be turned into income producing units for the people who lived here a long time and could benefit from the rent, fix their own buildings, is a whole other issue. But I do think, again, at least from the analyses that I've done so far, there's enough land, enough space in infill housing to grow the city and have a much greater supply. What that supply should look like, who it should be for, is a whole other kettle of fish.
Mark, you mind if so I'm not just announcing that I have a vision to make Hudson livable for 10,000 people. I'm working with Mark. I'd asked Mark to help me determine what that looks like and how possible it is. And so my intention is to have an actual vision that's sort of based on the reality of affordable housing development that I can share with you, and we'll also produce conversations about what's possible or what's not possible.
Well, that's interesting because it is difficult to talk about Hudson being affordable when it presents itself on its face as a very unaffordable place, a very bougie, expensive place so often. I think that does tie into the look of Hudson and what you talk about, a business coalition to bring in different kinds of businesses and make it a more rich atmosphere, and arts organizations that are more like that, I think would help that idea.
What's the incentive though, right? So, if you think about Galvin, he built however many units over there. His incentive was a fiber, right? And he got a bunch of state money. So if you go out and find businesses, if you look at any business on Warren Street, 1,000 square feet is $4 to $5 grand, right? To rent. you got to sell a lot to make 4 to 5 grand to pay rent. And the only reason why it's 4 to 5 grand is because your taxes are $20,000. So like it's, you got to look at it strategically. What is the incentive for any of those businesses to come? How do they make enough money? And then, oh, by the way, how do they employ people that can afford to live here and walk to work or even drive a short drive and not come from another county?
It's complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are all legitimate questions. I mean, I don't think there are reasons not to try.
No, I'm not saying don't try.
Yeah.
But when you start to sit down and have those conversations, there's got to be something that creates the win-win. What is the win-win? Because if I'm a
This is the
business,
point. Hudson is an amazing place. We live in one of the most beautiful places in the world, and you have to be a jackass to not want to live here. Obviously, and that we are. You know what I mean? Like, this is a great place to live, and we offer a really particularly way of living that's fantastic. And I do think that the city is special, and that we have an opportunity to try to make it a place where people would want to move and people would want to start companies.
There's a real world factor at work here also. Remember, Peter, that just in the past 10 years, the Hudson River Valley has seen an enormous surge since COVID, but even before then. So my point is very simple, which is we're all of the things that you said, but surrounding us, we live in an economically competitive and becoming more economically competitive environment. And so, if we want to do these things, we have to compete with a lot of areas.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that's right.
You mentioned Cambridge, Massachusetts as a model.
Only because they had they'd gone through a charter review process with a charter review commission, and they actually one of the suggestions they had was to have a resident assembly. So there is precedent that citizens' assembly are happening in America, and that the communities are embracing this as a way of doing democracy differently. And so that resident assembly every term or every other term will happen, and so it's a model that's working.
But bouncing off what he said, are there other upstate New York towns or cities that you think is like, wow, they've got it together?
I feel like Hudson's super lucky. You know what I mean? I feel like we have our struggles, but we're very lucky to have what we have. I mean, I think Hudson's sort of a boom and bust town. I feel like we have all of our eggs in the sort of the tourism and the hospitality basket, and I think it's worth trying to be really strategic about inviting new types of industries and new types of employers into the town to sort of round out the economy. And I mean, the sales tax in Hudson and in the region has been on the decline. We're sort of overwhelmingly dependent on a very narrow set of revenue sources, and so.
Troy is interesting. If you've been to Troy, they have an enormous amount of building going on there right now. I think they're an interesting model to study. I don't know much about them, but I've been there, and there's so much construction in those old buildings and renovation. It's like rampant. Yeah. But now it feels like they have a lot of empty, new, renovated buildings, so I don't know where they're headed.
Yeah. Sage owns a lot of it.
Oh, well, see.
They bought multiple blocks.
So they sound like a Galvin of Troy.
Well, it's a college.
Oh, that's a college. I didn't know.
Yeah. It's a college. They bought up multiple.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
This is, and what Shannon said about the affordability of his employees. I mean, aren't we trading a Galvin for a Bard, which is the same tax thing? I mean, what if Bard doesn't, gets a 501c3 or what the hell's he called for a liberal arts? So, and we're in the same boat. Again.
Your questions are so spot on the tax issue in Cambridge,
That's
where
the bottom line for our town now.
yeah, but so I lived in Cambridge during the citizen assembly, and we studied some of the fields. They employ a lot of people and pay them six-figure salaries in Cambridge, and so the entire town of Cambridge is just has this economic bump because those universities. They have 2 universities with $80 billion endowments combined that just employs people. I don't think Bard will employ that many folks here. Point one, but it could. But and I think they'll more likely sell the properties, and that would be good because then they're on the market. But I think that the main thing here, is if we do indeed still have 20% of the housing in Hudson be some level of affordable, that's higher or lower. Let's say it's 18. The national average is 2%. New York is maybe 10% with all the NICA buildings. Europe is at 5 or lower outside of like Berlin and key cities people love to love. So we are 2x New York City, with the capital of capitalism in America that can afford anything thanks to Wall Street. And we are 10x more than the American national average in public housing. I'm not saying I want less public housing. I'm not saying we should have less public housing. I'm just saying that means you have less taxable property and more folks who might rely on certain services. And I say that as the precursor to a statement, a question that we won't resolve today. But I think Peter has thought a lot about and read a lot about and could, come up with different policies with his policy advisors. Is the number one thing that made the comic store that you mentioned on the 200s leave, and Shanan having a lot of, like running a great business is hard given the cost structure, and the fact that the front of my building on Warren is not legally able to become a storefront or a store, even though I want it to be, is taxes and regulation. And so if you want people to stick around, if they're rich or poor, low income or whatever, just lower the taxes. And the only way to have lower taxes, there are two ways. So you grow the tax base or you spend less. And no one has spoken about it. I'm not faulting you, so it's still long to November, and I'm sure you will. But no one has talked about like how we're gonna spend less money. Kinderhook and Chatham has more people than Hudson. A greater population, they're approaching 8,000. And they have a quarter to a third of our budget. Now someone would say, well, we're a city, we need our own police department, which is not legally a requirement. But do we need to spend 4 or 5 times as much money to serve the same people, right? Let's say if we had double the budget of Kinderhook and Chatham, we would have a $10 million budget, right? So that would be half of what it is today. And then Shanan, wouldn't you like to have a half of your tax bill year? We could have cheaper beers, couldn't we? Right, it'd be fantastic. And the comic book store will still be around. And a family who's moving here from New York to buy a starter home will not be outpriced by a cash offer by the Spark of Hudson to then renovate it for 3 years to only now have one person live in it until they can find other people that they choose to live in it. And that is what I find problematic about Hudson, is we are raising the taxes on people who work, and we are not asking taxes on people who don't work, or billionaires from Europe and Manhattan who come here to take advantage of the opportunity zone tax rate, or Bard, or Cambridge, or whatever. So lower taxes, lower expenditures, please. Then, if I could vote, I would vote for you.
So one thing I will say is make offers on these properties. Make offers to Galvin, make offers to Bard. Let's get them on the tax rolls.
Right, July. So it's 4 o'clock. I want to thank everybody for showing up. I really appreciate it. We're going to do one of these a month. I'll be talking to Mayor Tiffany Martin, who was the first woman mayor of Hudson. I'll be talking to Quentin Cross, who's a longtime neighbor. And then I got one other as yet to be named guest. Mark, thank you so much for
Of course.
accepting my
It was an absolute pleasure. I learned a lot. Thank you, everyone, for coming.